But I do believe there are very real concerns around data and privacy and the negative it can be used for too.
On this episode of the RCN Podcast, senior copywriter Ellis Malmgren interviews Matthew Byrd.
When I started out in scanning technology, there was nobody really teaching us how to do it.
It really speaks to how you can ultimately relate to people.
Oh yeah. After I had a car accident in high school, I lost the ability to pursue sports. There's so much that I want to do with RCN. I want to be able to dedicate more time to it. Growing into this technology opened a lot of doors. Keeping an eye on what your priorities are, family and faith. I did have some pressure in my mind at that point because...
Would you say he was hard on you? Matthew Byrd in the RCN studio for a little role reversal.
Wow. Hello, Ellis.
In growing the RCN podcast, you've brought to light an array of original thinkers and doers in reality capture and adjacent tech. And I think with that, however, the community wants some light shed on you, grand purveyor of all this information. So thanks for playing the role of interviewee today. We'll touch on tech and RCN, but this is mostly about Matthew.
Wow.
Albeit how Matthew at times relates to tech and RCN. So leading off, what's a favorite failure of yours?
That is a great question. Because I'm so used to sitting here talking about technology, and part of the reason being that there are so many failures that happen with technology, that's the first thing that pops in my head, is there are multiple projects that I have completely failed on. Because when I started out in scanning technology, there was nobody really teaching us how to do it. So the first thing that pops in mind is a large warehouse project.
Okay.
First time tackling a project of 1 million square feet. And prior to that, working on a lot of smaller projects. Technology is a lot easier to utilize on those. We approached a large effort the same way we would a small one, and we didn't understand the intricacies yet of scan registration and survey control integration and error accumulation between different scanners. And that is the first thing that pops in my mind because I lived the problems that now I still see people hitting. And I'm like, man, there's still not an organization or a process in the industry that helps people avoid that. So instantly those types of things pop in my mind when that question pops up, a favorite failure. It's like being on a job where you are doing something that you don't know anybody has ever done before, and therefore you're taking it one step at a time, not really understanding everything you're doing, but you see a problem and you're trying to take those steps to solve it, and therefore hitting roadblocks and errors and things that you didn't understand. And ultimately, I mean, I've lived projects, right, that way where it did not go as planned. We ended up finding errors in data. It caused problems. It caused delays. And yet, instead of giving up on the technology and saying it wasn't good enough for the job or reverse engineering that and say, okay, there's obviously a problem, and then digging into why did it happen? Can we fix it? What was the reason for it? Is there a way in this technology to avoid that next time? Trial different registration processes or control processes. And then on the next job, it got a little better and it got a little better. And so that's why over 10 years of running through failures and hitting roadblocks, I started learning things that I'm like, man, we had to learn these all the hard way. How can we start helping the industry learn these? Because there's people going through those same issues today. And there will be tomorrow and next year because the adoption of these tools is growing.
I think it really speaks to how you can ultimately relate to people because you're not just in third person, you've actually lived it.
So much of what we focus on now, the messaging we're focusing on, the tools, the problems, it's because I've actually sat in a conference room talking about the problems on a job, or I'm out in the field with a scanner and I'm running into those problems. So it very much has been lived. And so I can relate with all the story.
What do you rebel against? What are you anti?
That brings up a lot of thoughts too. And they could, man, these are good questions.
Let it be said, these curveballs will not last the entirety.
There's okay.
There's a little more structure that will come, I assure you.
That's okay. I could just see these curveballs going in many directions. Again, if I'm thinking in the technology side, which is what still pops in my mind, I'm anti-technology people.
Okay.
There are so many people hesitant to new technologies. I definitely am pro-technology. State your question again.
What do you rebel against?
What do I rebel against?
Yeah.
The status quo, being comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Stagnation, maybe.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Or getting so comfortable with a process or a role or a technology that you're not willing to disrupt yourself or your process or your team or the tools you use or how you get to your end goal.
Absolutely.
Which ultimately is the lack of innovation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because innovation is not just a technology, it is improving how you get to your end goal.
Almost a philosophy.
Everything.
Itself,
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Sure. You're a known proponent of AI. What do you think is the most valid concern that AI doomsayers might have?
Ooh, that's a good question. I will preface it that I do not at all claim to be an AI expert.
Certainly.
I am very interested in where it can improve processes and where it can help us utilize data we're creating in a more useful way and extract more information faster. But I do believe there are very real concerns around the negative it can be used for too, right? Like, even if I use a simple example of how I think that, ChatGPT style technology and the AI learning how to respond to certain questions and extract, give you information, as useful as that is, and I love it, how could somebody use that same thing in a negative way to, again, you think about hackers or you think about interacting with conversations and being able to give the wrong answers. And I think there's definite concerns about data and privacy and
just broad information, right?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Though I think there's concerns, I'm always still going to be pro for it because it's there. There's no stopping it.
Right.
People are going to use it. They're going to keep building upon it. They're going to keep enhancing it. So I always think if we understand that and we are an innovative community that believes in technology and our job should be to dig even deeper into it to help try to put some of those safeguards in place and also learn how to use it for good. I don't think it does anybody any good to say, shut it down.
The world's ending.
Because you can't stop it. You can't stop people from using it. So you should also learn how to use it for good and to combat the potential negativity.
Responsible use.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Tremendous answers. So let's bring a little structure into it and go back to your youth. If you're down with that. Who were some role models to you, to young Matthew Byrd?
Ooh, role models to young Matthew Byrd. That is a great question. I definitely say there were some family members. My dad and some of my grandparents, I would say. Apart from that, I was really into music, and I was really into sports. So not that those are like major role models that I would say influenced or changed my life, but those are people that come to mind.
Yeah.
Like when I was younger, I wasn't following a bunch of very influential people that that I was learning. I don't have a lot of people that come to mind, apart from
Yeah, it was very
apart from
familial.
those. Yeah.
What sports did you play?
I played a little bit of everything. The sport I played most was football.
Okay.
And then in high school, I also got into ice hockey.
Okay.
But football was my main sport.
Do they allow fights
In ice
high
hockey?
school ice hockey?
In the club that I was playing in, there were not a lot of fights.
Okay.
Yes.
Can't say that's a bad move for,
Yeah, I definitely question the fighting in hockey. I've
Yeah.
never really dug into the history of it, but I do question, like, okay, what other sports do they just encourage that you stop in the middle of the field and start punching each other? And like it's part of the sport. Some people, that's why they watch hockey.
That's true.
They're disappointed if they go to a game and there's not a fight. I am actually very curious where that started.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like one of those things 100 years from now when they look back and they, the retroactive society judgment, if you will, and they're like, they were still, people would just wail on each other for basically no reason.
And obviously there's like UFC and fighting and that's what you do.
Yeah.
But then there's basketball and football, but hockey, the goal is skating and hitting a puck.
Yeah.
How did take your gloves off and punch each other, pause the whole game? And
they need to do a documentary.
Very interesting.
There better be one.
I'm curious.
Yeah. So you spoke a lot about your family, influential many of your family members were. What's one thing you've learned to do and not do from your parents?
I think one thing I've learned to do would be make sure you don't let your priorities get out of order.
Okay.
So, growing up in a large family, kids, and I think keeping an eye on what your priorities are. And obviously, you get to choose what your priorities are. Not everybody has the same priorities, but I share similar priorities as my parents.
Okay.
So I see that bleeding over to, okay, if I have a priority of family and faith and, not let the pursuit of success or money, now that I've gotten into entrepreneurship, business, whatever, keep an eye on your balances. I think that's something positive that I've taken.
I guess on the inverse, not doing, you could say, don't be flimsy with priorities, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of hits a to do and not to do.
Certainly. So circling back to music, you put that on par with sports.
Yep.
Solo performer? Was this a band?
I've done a little bit of everything.
High school band?
So
like the 50-person one? Or
I started playing guitar when I was like 10. We had a German exchange student that came and lived with us. That is where I started playing guitar. And I grew up in church, so I started getting plugged into play on the worship team or play in the high school group or and that's where it kind of started going. And then when I was younger, we had some youth bands and things like that. But I just kept playing kind of hobby style, I didn't get super dedicated to it. But, and this would be a longer story, but after I had a car accident in high school, I lost the ability to pursue sports, which I would say at that time, prior to my accident, sports was my life. I loved sports. I would have never quit. I would have kept going. The biggest time of me pursuing music was after my accident, losing the ability to pursue sports. I kind of got back into it because I couldn't run anymore.
I see.
But I could sit there and play music.
Okay.
And I ended up actually, again, more story there I could dig into, but I ended up joining a band, an existing band that was looking for a bassist. I went and tried out. And at 18 years old, I joined a rock band of some guys that were in their 30s and went on a 25-state tour.
A 25-state tour?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
We can truncate this, but you went from, you just joined, you're the spring chicken of the band.
Yeah.
To...
They already had a tour planned, and their bassist dropped out. And so they went to auditions, and they were looking for somebody, and they already had a whole tour planned. And so I joined, learned music, learned their songs, and bought a bass rig, which I wasn't even really a hardcore bassist. I was a guitarist. I've played bass a bit. It was pretty easy for me to pick up. But yeah, joined a band. The style of the music was similar, always compared to Tool.
Excellent.
Which was one of their biggest influences.
Okay.
Yeah, that was quite a wild ride at that age.
What happens at the end of this 25-state tour?
That was around 2008, which is also when economy issues, job stuff.
Bad times.
Yep.
Yep.
And most people know this if they've known somebody in music. You're not making money until you're really big in music. So the tour was funding itself. It was a paying tour. But at the end of that, it was like, okay, it funded itself, but these other guys that were in their 30s, there was late 20s, early mid 30s, they had families. So it kind of became a decision of like, okay, we're not going to go back out. Like, we're going to put this on pause. Some of us need to get jobs, support the families. I was still young. I didn't have a family at that point. I did have some pressure internally in my mind at that point, because I also knew that my parents still had bills from my car accident at that point.
Okay.
And they were also helping me on the music journey and trying to pursue that. And so there was also that feeling for me of like, okay, this isn't going big yet.
Yeah.
So I was a part of saying like, okay, I need to probably go work. And that was when I stepped back into working and surveying.
Working and surveying.
Yep.
So step back into, so you previously had...
I had previously worked, so my dad owned his own business for a while, a survey company, and he was very big in residential, and so he ended up at some point having to close as well.
Yep.
And that was when he ended up working at DeWalt Corporation, and that is the company that I joined from music to... It was an easy place. Like he was running department. It's like, hey, you could come in and be a chainman and go out in the field and survey.
Would you say he was hard on you?
No.
Okay.
No. I think he's always provided a lot of opportunity. I mean, I was still in high school, getting to come in and learn CAD or go out on the on a field crew. The jobs were not always super easy.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was one of the more difficult things to pick up? I mean, you said you'd done it briefly previously with them, but when you really got serious, then it was a full-time job in surveying. What was one of the more difficult learning curves at that time?
The first time getting in and starting to do AutoCAD work and understand the types of deliverables and drawings and things that we were creating. Obviously not having a background in it, not going to school for it. It's all just on the job learning. So I think there's a learning curve there.
Now to timestamp this, we're talking 2010-ish? Is that roughly
20,
where we are?
Yeah, 2008 to between 2008, 2010. Yep.
Earliest days possible, when did you realize you were drawn to technology? Could be a film.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of technology, because the first thing that pops in my mind is video games.
Okay.
I mean, I was always into technology, but I would say my hands actually being on technology started with gaming.
Okay.
Because even in survey, back when I was first getting into it, there was some technology, yes, total stations GPS, but it wasn't 3D, wasn't gamification, wasn't point clouds. It wasn't anything that looked beautiful and fun. It was points and drawing line work, which, so I would say gaming was the first place that I got into technology.
But now if we rephrase as, let's say, technological innovation, sounds like, well, almost the absence thereof in early survey and seeing, okay.
Yep. And it was growing in survey to understand the different types of projects we were working on and the data we were trying to collect. That was when we were first introduced to a laser scanner. Was, I think, around 2010 was when we started getting into laser scanning. And at that point, most of the devices were really big, really heavy, really expensive, slow. But seeing that for the first time was mind-blowing. It was not like anything else we had ever done or seen in all of survey.
Can you recall specifically the first time?
Yeah.
Let's hear it. What were the details? What do you recall?
We had a sales guy come in and do a demo. And at that point, again, you have no idea what it even is. But the data is what tells the story. The fact that it was like, hey, let's go drive over to this site. We went by a big famous sign in Bakersfield. And he was like, let's set up over here. I'll show you how this works. We scanned this sign. We went back into the office and we dumped the data and we looked at it. And it was literally like looking at a digital replica of that sign. And again, before a scanner, we didn't have anything that was that visual. Like you're always taking one shot at a time and it's just, you're drawing a line. So that instantly was very exciting technology. And so the fact that now this fun visual way of working started entering an actual job, right? Gaming, that's fun. That's 3D environments.
Yep.
You do that in your free time. You're not getting paid to do that. But now, hey, this is a really cool visual 3D mapping technology. I can do that at work and like create these environments, but it's also useful to somebody. That was really exciting. And that was where my whole journey in reality capture started.
Certainly, which is still growing. And, two more things that are growing as well. So AI, machine learning. How do you see those two affecting reality capture as you know it in the coming years?
I think the biggest piece is how people get information out of the data. Right now, so many people are getting devices to capture data. They're buying all kinds of scanners. You can scan with your phone. You can buy a mobile scanner. You can use drones. And it's creating so much data that people hardly know what to do with. You can create some models. You can create a floor plan. But the future potential of software with AI being able to extract information from what's been captured is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
The example of Googling something, right? Like you want information about something, you Google it. Or maybe if you're me, you chat GPT it. I have started chat GPTing questions more than I Google questions.
Okay.
Because you get better answers immediately without having to go through a bunch of different, and it'll even give you sources of where it pulled information from. It's very cool. If you're not doing it yet, it's interesting.
So we're not talking strict information. Even are you talking restaurant lookups? Or are you talking random?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it will actually pull information from web now and give you the sources of the links of where it gathered the information. Short story. I'm going to divert off to a short story now because we're talking about it. In our backyard, there was these weird little flies on this, on our fruit trees. And I got close enough to just like zoom in and grab a picture of it with Google to use the image search to identify what type of bug it was. And then I could take that and say, okay, that matched. That is what it is. If I was to try to go ask certain information about that in Google, you're going to dig for hours trying to find articles about, wait, but where is that? Like, how does that affect this? Is it safe to eat this? You're going to get so many different articles that maybe were from a different country or a different state or a different, So I used the image to figure out what it was, but then I just took that over into ChatGPT because I saw a bunch of them on the fruit tree. And I was able to say, if this is on the tree, like, is that safe to eat? And it can go through and say, here, based on these links, it does this is where it's from, this is what it's doing. And you can sit there and ask it more conversations. Okay, is it safe? Yes, but here's the steps you should take to make sure it is clean. What if you can't do that in Google?
True.
You're only searching for things that have already been written about, not it giving you answers based on the specific question you have. It's a very, very interesting tool.
It's like the ultimate info funnel.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Wild.
Yeah. So imagine that technology, though, inside of the software that engineers and surveyors and builders are using, not dump in hundreds of gigabytes of point clouds and try to cut it down so that you can see where a wall is and you have to draw a line so you can take it in. No. In a few years, you dump that data in with the imagery and you ask it, like you do with this, you ask it, can you identify all of the light switches throughout this whole building and tell me where they are and how many there are? Done. You don't have to sit there and manually have a designer sit there and go, light switch, place it. And you can think about so many different areas that could come into play. And this is you start thinking about the future of what we talk about with digital twins and where does that go? What if every building in the city was scanned and then had a model with the different assets and things that are in that building? And then a digital twin platform had that type of AI intelligence to be able to say, are there any light units that have a unnormal temperature right now? So I think that the ways that it can be used is going to really transform the way that we operate buildings and facilities and the maintenance of them and the predictive analytics that are done of them. And so I think we're barely scratching the surface.
It's a dreamland. I mean, it's just so easy to see why such excitement does exist for it.
I mean, and that's some of the types of things, whoever's really building a digital twin program right now, airports or hospitals or, those are the things that they are trying to start achieving. We're just so early that not very many softwares have this all pulled together. So it's still very early in that stage. But over the next couple of years, as people are developing solutions and they're integrating it and they're figuring out how to integrate the AI and the data and when some of those codes are cracked, you get the first few organizations that really prove it out. Now everybody's going to want it.
Floodgates open. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Tremendous. So we got excited and jumped forward. But I want to go back. The path from that first day of being introduced to laser scanning to the founding of Nexus 3D.
Yep.
What was that road?
Before laser scanning, I was not very excited about work.
Okay.
it was a job. I was young, and honestly, it felt like I had to do it. It was, going out in the field on a field crew and doing GPS or shooting points or, It was not exciting. I saw it as a career path because it was an easy in. Mm-hmm. But laser scanning is literally what lit a fire for me. Mm-hmm. And also being given the flexibility to be the one to kind of head it up.
Okay.
So I think it was a mix of the technology and the responsibility or freedom to dig into it.
Was this your dad who placed this certain trust in you?
I would say it was a mix of my dad was running survey department at the company, and then the owner of the company we were at.
Okay.
I would say it was kind of a mix decision of like, hey, I think he could do this. Yeah, that'd be a great, it was a group decision. I had credit to both of them. Excellent. For sure. So spent a couple years figuring out the technology, starting to integrate it into services and projects there, started expanding how we were using it into some project use cases that company had never even worked in before. So it started opening some new doors and markets. And when I first got started, this was new, right? Mm-hmm. I was previously in a not very valuable role, CAD drafting, or, being a mid-level CAD drafter or survey tech is not a high-paying role. Mm-hmm. Growing into this technology opened a lot of doors because it was not that common at that point.
Okay.
We started working for some bigger clients. They started seeing the benefits of the tools. I ended up getting a much larger job offer.
Okay.
To go help integrate that technology into another company. And at the time, the business we were in wasn't ready to support trying to compete with that, being that it was still kind of newly integrated there, but the larger company saw a much bigger benefit. So I got a huge raise.
Okay.
I made a transition and go kind of start helping use it in another firm. Short story, that happened again. Much larger corporation.
Okay.
Said, we're going to bypass degree requirements that we typically have. We're going to make a brand new position and title that we've never had in our organization. Wow. We want you to be a manager. It's the biggest pay I've ever had, like by far. And I was in my mid-20s, early 20s. Mm-hmm. That was like life-changing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is crazy.
I bet.
This is just in a few years of starting to learn these new technologies, using it, marketing it, talking with different clients. And I'll also say through that process is also when I really started using LinkedIn.
Ah, okay.
Which I will attribute a lot of my growth to.
Okay.
Because through that process, I started getting into using social, specifically LinkedIn. I would take screenshots of this point cloud data that I thought was so amazing, and I would go do a LinkedIn post and say, look at this Bakersfield sign, or look at this oil and gas facility. And anybody that I had connected with would see it, and they started going, what the heck is that? That's amazing. Sharing it, liking it. And I would start specifically searching on LinkedIn for like, okay, we're working in this oil and gas company. I started searching for the people in the oil and gas company and connecting with them, and they started seeing what I was doing. So along with the new technology, sharing it on LinkedIn started that connection of like, oh, you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You know that new technology, which is why I kept getting hired by other companies.
Brilliant.
So the last company I was at before starting my business, I went from a 50-person company to a 20,000 person company. huge pay raise, huge responsibility. It felt really cool. I was driving into a big office in Southern California. I was greeted by the head guys. Like it was weird.
A big deal.
I was, again, in my 20s, no college, no nothing. It was like, this is really cool. But that didn't last very long.
Okay.
By my choosing.
Okay.
Because going from a small company to a massive corporation, I hit a lot of headaches I didn't know existed. I had never worked in a corporation of that size before. Though I thought it was going to be fast-paced, they were going to give me freedoms. They were being innovative. They hired me because of the technology, and I did like the people I worked with, but I think there was a lot of structure issues. There were a lot of processes. For me at that point, I was way too excited about the technology and moving fast and all this stuff I could do that I felt like I also got handcuffs put on me. Hey, we hired you. We want you to do all this. Okay, here's my plan. This is what I would do. I want to go to all these offices around the country, teach them about this. We're going to integrate it here. It's like, no. I was like, that's what I got hired for, right? And so there was definitely some conflict there. I started building a team. I started integrating the services into clients, and it was going well. But there was so much red tape, so much legal issues, so much IT issues, just approval processes that I don't necessarily blame the company. And I don't say anything bad about that company I used to work for. I still like them, still know people there. But for me at that time, wasn't working.
Sure.
I wanted to run 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Okay.
I was getting way too excited about all the applications of the tool. I wanted to work in architecture. We were working in oil and gas. There were so many things I wanted to do and companies I wanted to support that were maybe outside of what their initial need or want was, that for me, I ended up 10 months in to this dream job. 10 months in, I was 25 at the time. I had a third kid on the way.
Okay.
I was not in that dream job long enough that I saved up a bunch of money or anything, smart like that.
Yeah.
Yet I decided to quit my job. I said, I've done this LinkedIn thing. I've made a lot of relationships. I see the need for these technologies in so many different industries. And I'm getting requests to do things that my current company doesn't want to do. I think I could support more people in a better way if I just did it by myself.
Okay.
So I talked about it, went home, talked to my wife about it, and it was like a 2-week time frame of idea of doing it to handing in my letter of resignation.
Okay.
I did not build a business plan. I did not build a budget. I didn't do any preparation. I knew nothing about building a company.
Yeah.
All I knew was that I knew a lot of people who knew what I needed that I know how to do. I knew how to scan. I knew how to fix processes. I knew how to do registration. I knew how I had already learned some of those headaches of scanning the wrong way and how to work through them. And so I knew that I had clients and that I knew how to help them. That was it. So I quit, came up with a lot of weird company names, and somehow landed at Nexus 3D Consulting.
Okay.
And my very first focus was just me helping other companies do laser scanning, process scan data. So it was just me consulting at that point.
You say just you, literally, is this just Matthew Byrd? Did you pry any team members you had assembled at the company?
At first, nothing.
Okay.
At first, it was just, look, guys, sorry, I had built the team there. I had hired people from my previous company even. They kind of followed me. They were following my journey a little bit. So I was like, I have to leave. Yep. Here's why. Yep. Like, you guys can stay. The company will keep using that department and grow it. And they were set up in a good spot. They got promoted to kind of take over some of what I was doing. So when I quit, it was just me. Just me and a laptop. I had to go buy a laptop. I had to turn in my previous computer. So I took out a $5,000 loan to buy my starting computer.
Wow. So revisiting those early days, your first startup, you've got a family, mid-20s. Were there any dark nights? Doubt?
Ooh.
Nervousness?
Sure.
Or were you, yeah? Okay.
I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about them, though.
Do you mean here and now, or even then in their mid-20s, Matthew, you just did not? Okay.
So if I look back and gave advice now to people who were in my role, I definitely would suggest doing things slightly different.
Okay.
Because the fact that I just quit with no savings, I look back now and I'm like, well, that's pretty risky and maybe stupid. It worked.
Yeah.
But it's not probably the smartest move or the safest move. However, it is completely what gave me the drive to get work. So week one of no longer being at previous company and having a check coming was, okay, I'm calling Mark and Jim and Greg and it's like, hey, I started this. I announced it on LinkedIn. I had, so it was, I better get a project and get paid or else we're not eating. That's not a great plan. But again, there's a certain level of drive and go get it when that was the case.
Yeah, you wonder if everything is guaranteed to be cushy, what urgency would be there,
And that, to be honest, I think that's a lot of problem with, not necessarily problem. I think a lot of people get stuck right there, which is why many people never start. Am I going to wait for the perfect time to do that thing? No. I'd rather do it messy and scary and do it now than the result of what I'm missing if I don't do it.
So initial few months, Nexus 3D is live. Is it just smooth but gradual? Is it bumpy?
To be honest, it was smooth and gradual and grew.
Okay. So fairly steady success.
Yeah. Month one, I was out doing projects and I was having fun. I loved doing what I was doing at that point. So having someone, obviously I had done projects. I'd done a lot of projects at those previous companies. But when it was now just me and my name and it was my company and I was going to get the check, it was really cool getting projects now. I was like, wait a minute. I used to, all of that went to the company before. And now I only have to get enough that's enough that I need to live on for month one. Like month one goal is eat, right? Not huge department. And that happened pretty quickly. There were, I'll be honest, the biggest struggle I have seen in business is cash flow.
Okay.
Period. It stayed that way for the following several years. Because, I don't know. I don't work in a lot of industries, so I don't know what is normal everywhere. But in construction, survey, in that world, it's very common that you do work for someone and you get paid 30, 60, 90 days later. So having to figure that out for the first time, even in the previous companies, I didn't really have to worry about the billing and the time frame of getting paid and all those things. We just got paid our normal check every 2 weeks. Now it's like, wait a minute, I'm landing the jobs, I'm doing the contracts, I'm writing the proposals, I'm traveling, I'm scanning, I'm registering data, I'm delivering it, I'm invoicing, I'm making sure they actually send a check, I'm cashing it, I'm, finding the next job and doing all that over and over and over. So there was a lot of learning about business that got forced quickly, right? Because I didn't know any of that. I didn't read about any of that. I didn't take a class on how to do it or prepare for it. It was just like, oh yeah, I have to invoice you. But I will say overall, it was pretty smooth.
What was team growth like?
So the first year, I stayed pretty steadily busy. I will still go back and say one thing I wish I did early was still save. I never saved money. I always spent it. Now here's one thing another comment I'll even say on that though. I don't completely think I would change that. I would save some. As you're building, if you're planning to hire and grow a team, grow the savings so that there's more cushion.
Okay.
However, I also think way too many people are scared of spending money. I spent money on things like, though budgets were tight and I'm having to get work to eat, I also wasn't afraid to go spend the money to get an airplane ticket and buy a conference ticket and go take somebody out to dinner, take a client out. Like, I wasn't afraid of that either. So not all my spending was it wasn't just personal spending. It was like, I'm going to upgrade a website. I'm going to travel to a conference. Is anything promised from coming from that? No. And so many people, I think, are hesitant to spend money investing in themselves and networking. And I learned very early on that is critical. So between LinkedIn and going to physical events and meeting people and shaking hands, like those were everything. That is absolutely what built my business. I attribute 75% of all my business, all of it, all of my work ever, my whole career, to LinkedIn.
Predominantly because if I'm interpreting this right, it's more through the connective aspect as opposed to strictly learning. I mean, surely there are things to learn from, but because you were on the vanguard
to be honest,
of this,
yes, 0% about learning for me. 99% about connecting with people I've met, connecting with people I haven't met that are similar, that I know may be in need of service, and just doing that over time and posting examples of work and service and things that I do and project examples and data examples over several years time frame. That is what led to constant inquiries. There's so much we could dig into there, but ultimately that process led to, after 7 years in business and having 20 plus employees and doing work all over the country, guess how many business development people we had? 0. We didn't spend money on ads. All of our business came from networking and LinkedIn. Just constantly answering phones. Hey, I remember you reached out one time and said you did this scanning thing, and now we're on this construction job and we need to map this. And well, okay, if you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 30,000 people that could potentially need it at one point, how frequently do they have to need scanning that one of them might call you? So starting pretty early on sharing that and keeping in front of people, I just ended up becoming the person everybody knew when they thought about laser scanning or a question came up about it.
So you're in rarefied air when it comes to LinkedIn usage. I mean, we're talking, 12, 13 years? Are we, maybe 2010? Maybe almost 15 years?
I think I'd have to look at the actual date, but I think it's about then, yeah. Yep. And
so seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the words LinkedIn pet peeve? Because you've seen a lot of it.
Lots of spammy messages.
Are those real people? Sometimes
I mean, that would probably be it. The pet peeve for most people, including me, is like...
Oh, so you don't mean the LinkedIn sponsored ads. You mean people clearly on a mission to...
Either one. I do mean you get a message in your inbox and it is someone immediately hardcore trying to sell you on something.
Okay. Sure.
People hate that.
Yep.
And I get 10 a day or more.
Of course.
And as soon as I see it, I don't even care what it is, I delete it. Or I block the person. So if it's not, especially if it's not personal.
Okay.
If it is an obvious pasted message, it's gone. I might even remove the person if they tried to connect with me. If someone connects with me and they immediately just send me a non-personalized, generic sales big thing, I remove you and you're gone. Even if it was something good, I just don't care.
Right.
That's what I think most people trying to use LinkedIn for sales do wrong. Is you have to start with building a relationship.
Play the slow game. I mean, that would be your advice. Just
absolutely. Educating people. It's not a direct, easy sale. So building a network of people, putting a post out that shows something you could do, that doesn't promise a response or that someone's going to reach out and need that. But it's educating. And at some point, someone might. Doing that consistently absolutely is going to give you a result. Doing that consistently long term, lots of results, repeat results, lots of growth. I think the proper way to direct message, if you really want to build a relationship or get in with someone or try to sell somebody, is just do not do the big freaking copied message out the gate.
Yeah.
Like, I have had major success connecting with high-level people and companies and starting messages, but you have to actually care about who it is and learn about them and reach out in a way that is personal to them. Not, hey, I own this company. I do a lot of laser scanning. I want your services. Please, no. But if I reach out to a director at some architecture company and I say, hey, thanks for connecting. I would love to, grab coffee or, whatever. There's so many directions you can take the message that are better than just copy paste.
Yep.
I browse through their profile. I look at a recent post they did about a hotel or something that they worked on. And then I can personalize it and say, hey, we just did laser scanning on a big hotel project. I was curious if you guys use laser scanning in your work. That might get an ignore, or it might get a, oh no, we've never heard of laser scanning. What's that? Or it might get a, we just used that on a job, but the provider had an issue. Or there's so many directions conversation can go, but you're going to get 90% more responses if you go a personal route that's something related. Like, spend 5 more minutes and go browse the person's profile, read about what they've done, browse through their posts and look at jobs or projects or posts, and then reach out in a personal way. The spam stuff is 1%.
So going back, we have a smooth, gradual success story in Nexus 3D. The road from there to reality capture network. What does that entail?
Over the entire time of Nexus, there were all those lessons learned we've hit, right? Like we've talked about. Running into all these, like, we have to figure it out ourselves. What's the difference between scanning that 1 million square foot warehouse and scanning a small job? I don't know. I'm going to run into these problems. But taking the lessons learned of when I started scanning and starting to build Nexus and do all these diverse projects, it started showing me the use cases across so many industries. Working in forensic jobs. I would have never thought to go work in forensics. But getting the ask of like, hey, we saw your post about scanning a building. We have a project in Hollywood with this big failing building that has a major lawsuit going on. and we need to document the parking structure and look at these structural defects. And I'm like, we could do that. Like getting called up about a forensic job where there was a mass shooting and being asked to support police and FBI with processing this data that they don't know how to register and use. Did I ever in my past think that I would be working on those types of projects? No. Mm-hmm. I've seen them in movies. I thought they're cool. Mm-hmm. Going to downtown Manhattan and working on a high rise of a major company next to Trump Tower. Like, did I think I was going to get paid to fly out there and work at like really cool locations, getting pulled to so many different jobs? Mm-hmm. Going to Alaska and scanning these fishing vessels and this beautiful... There were a few things that sparked the thought of RCN.
Okay.
The challenges that we had run into with technology, figuring out how to use it, running into problems, the fact that there wasn't a lot of education out there to help us. It was all on the job learning. So the failures, the learning, the education piece. The other was the lack of awareness of the tools. Mm-hmm. All of our work back in those early days was from us presenting it to people and saying, this is this new technology, laser scanning, that you have never heard of. Here's how it works. Here's what we can do. So that was the only way. Nobody was really asking for you to come scan. It was a lot of proactive selling. Those two things, I think I said there was a third. I think those two are the main reasons for RCN.
Okay.
The fact that nobody has been focused on building that education content. No one is, even today, even some of the initiatives I still want to do that maybe haven't been achieved yet, nobody else is doing them. Mm-hmm. Nobody is teaching people properly when they first go to try to buy a scanner. What scanner? Why that one? How fast? What's your budget? How do you approach the type of project in your industry properly? What is survey control? How accurate does your data need to be? What type of deliverable you're creating? What software do you have to buy? There are so many steps in the process. In fact, it's even worse today than it used to be.
Wow.
Because back then, there were just a few processes and a few options. Over the last 10 years, there's way more devices to buy, way more variety, way more uses of the data, way more software. There's still no one really helping guide that ecosystem and that education process and the training. There's no certifications. You don't know how much experience someone has. There's still a lot of industry mess. Mm-hmm. So the original thoughts with RCN were, one, I had been following other podcasters and social media influencers and people outside of our industry for quite some time, and hearing about podcasting and hearing about the ability to reach audience. And over time, I finally put those two together and said, okay, I'm watching a lot of people successfully do this in other industries with podcasts and conferences and communities and educating, and I don't see anybody doing that in geospatial, let alone even bigger outside of just where I started was geospatial, was survey and scanning, but architecture, construction, engineering, the whole built environment. There's not a lot of people taking and implementing those types of tools and the benefits of those in our industry. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, if one of our problems is awareness to the technologies and clients not even knowing they're an option or how to use them or the benefits, what if we take the podcast and we start that? Mm-hmm. And we can talk about that instead of historically sitting down with one person and talking about the benefits and giving a presentation, and now they know the benefit. One guy.
Yeah.
Or maybe a boardroom of 20.
Yeah.
What if we just record that conversation and publish it to hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands? Because I saw the benefit of LinkedIn and the benefit of building that network, I knew that that was content that I could push out to, even if nobody else in podcasting world listened to it, I could create the content that could go out to all of our own audience. That was one of the very initial purposes for starting RCN.
Okay.
Sharing the conversations that we have one-on-one with people, and in an effort to educate on a bigger level than we can do with one company at a time.
Okay.
And there was still a lot of the bigger vision of like, okay, what more can we do? Can we actually solve the education problem? Can we solve the standards and training problem? So after starting RCN, those things have kind of organically taken, one step at a time, right? Like year 2, we decided to put on our own in-person event. We had so many connections. I knew so many people. LinkedIn was a big benefit for us. What if we just throw our own conference instead of all these other conferences we're going to where they talk a little bit maybe about reality capture? What if we put on our own event and try to bring all these people together, and that's all we focus on is educating around all these technologies and the tools and the problems and the use cases and the benefits. And so putting on the first conference was another weird, scary, exciting step of, well, I'm not an event planner. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how many people are coming. But anytime I've come up with what I think is the right idea to do, I do not like waiting around on it.
Okay.
So the first conference, it went from idea to execution in about 90 days.
Okay. For the first conference. How long roughly then from Nexus being 100% of your career focus to the founding of RCN, roughly?
So some of the story there, Nexus was 100% of my focus for the first 5 years of it. I think it was year 6. It might have been year 5 that we started RCN. It started as I had this scanning technician that we just hired that was good at video production. And then we also hired a marketing person who had some experience in that area too. And we're like, and that was finally the launching point of, hey, guys, I think we should start a podcast. So it started with a couple employees within Nexus. There was no revenue plan. It was not, hey, let's spin off a whole new business yet. It was really like, hey, I think we can use this to educate our network, having these conversations. So it took a year, took 2 years, doing the conference. Like it kept growing organically to where we had a lot of people that wanted to be involved. We had sponsors for the conference. We had, there was natural growth with it now, even though it was just kind of a separate brand within our business. It was really 2023 that the thought and conversation came around of there's so much that I want to do with RCN. I want to be able to dedicate more time to it. I want to be able to grow it and impact the industry in a bigger way. And it just so happens that we started having some inquiries and some conversations around acquisition interests of Nexus.
Okay.
So we went through that process. We decided to sell Nexus. That acquisition happened last year. And in that process, I was able to split RCN out of Nexus as its own entity.
Okay. Was there much contemplation in the sale of Nexus?
No.
Okay.
Not for me. A lot of people questioned that. Like, that's your baby. That's your first company. That's your first brand. Like, you're just growing it. You don't want to me, again, when I have a feeling that it's the right move, I move.
And you had something else to go right into.
So I'm still involved in supporting the company. I still have a role. The company that we went through the acquisition with, we formed a new entity that I'm currently still serving as Chief Innovation Officer behind the scenes.
Okay.
I couldn't really leave that company hanging, right? Yeah. I can't not be involved. So I'm still helping them build, because now there's these two sides. Historically, I've been servicing and helping people with these services. However, I also believe that the impact we can make with RCN is much bigger globally. The education, the training, the certification, the awareness building, but somebody still has to service those. I don't believe today there are enough service providers to support the desire for these technologies in the next 5 years.
Okay.
So I'm still involved with services and with building RCN, though most people know that. Most people don't ever hear me really talk about them at the same time.
Okay.
Because there's naturally going to be a question mark. I've gotten direct questions, right, of is RCN a front or some way for you to just get more work as a service provider? Which is totally understandable because what comes from building awareness? Same thing that happened with LinkedIn. As awareness builds, people want the work. They want the services. They want the technology. They start asking questions. So RCN has benefited our services for sure. It's also benefited other people's services.
Sure.
I have zero, in my mind, I never have competition. Doesn't matter what company it is. I just don't believe in focusing on competition. I think there is so much opportunity and there's so much work out there that I'm not worried about anybody competing. I'm very much about building the industry up and helping everybody get more work. So because that is there, because that has been a question mark, and it's very reasonable for people to wonder that, I put a very hard line in that you don't really hear me talk about both at the same time, ever. My purpose with RCN is so much bigger than me getting service work that I am not okay. I'm not on stage selling my own services at our own conference. They are not related. You don't see me talk about both. So I try to make that a very clear focus. And again, behind the scenes, I am involved with both. And but I will never try to take work from another service provider. I'm not going behind people's back. I'm not at my own conference trying to steal people's clients.
Yeah.
I do get people to ask that question, and honestly, I reverse it, and I tell them the opposite. I'm like, no, you know what the conference is? It's all of my clients and all of my friends and all of my contractors and all of my relationships. I'm actually providing you the opportunity to steal them from me. I am teaching you guys about it. I'm bringing them to come share project case studies. So though there's some gray around that, honestly, for people, the fact that I'm involved in multiple businesses, I do the best I can to make sure that that's very clear. And I have to operate in a very honest and integral way. And the other thing is you can't always make everybody happy either. So the ones that still have question or concern about it, all I can do is explain it, tell it, and then I just have to live it out and show it. And if I ever do anything that goes against that, then I'm more than willing to, take the point the finger at me and say that. But there's nothing visible. I don't do it.
Absolutely. So we've talked at length about the growth of not one but two companies, but I want to focus on Matthew Byrd's growth. And in particular, we've mentioned Archon a couple times, the stage. You've watched and given a tremendous amount of professional presentations. Was your first at RCN? Had you been a presenter before then?
I have presented at other conferences, before our own.
Before your own?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So for the last 14 years, really, I think it was kind of around the same time frame that I started getting into the technologies and being given some of that responsibility, that I also started seeing conferences and going to those to try to learn and network. And so the conferences I've gone to for the last 14 years or so, there's only 2. There's a lot of conferences out there, and I don't put any of them down. I didn't go to a lot of conferences. I found a couple, and I just kept going to those. The 2 that I've gone to the longest are Autodesk University and what used to be called SPAR, to all the people that have been there for a long time, but is now GeoWeek. I've been going to those for a long time.
Okay.
The first couple times, just attending and seeing what the heck conferences were about and what the presenters were like and what they're presenting on. And then I started submitting to give presentations because I was actively using cool technology. I was doing big, complex projects. So I started doing some kind of case study presentations on what laser scanning is and how we're using it. And started doing that at those conferences. And I also did, it's a smaller level, but I did a lot of just technical lunch and learn presentations to companies. Because again, back in the day, nobody was asking for scanning. We were going into a business and doing like a lunch and learn where we'd sit and present on laser scanning and how we used it for that type of industry. And that's where most of my presentations started.
Okay. The adaptation to life as a fairly frequent presenter, did you overcome any fear of public speaking?
Yeah. I still don't think I'm a great speaker.
Oh, now.
I'm just being honest. I don't. A lot of people, because the only thing they know me from is speaking on a podcast or at my own conference, like they see me as a public speaker. I don't love it. I am actually a pretty shy, quiet person.
Okay.
I have a hard time walking up and talking to people that I don't know. I have had to build that in as something that I have to do.
Okay.
Because it's part of my job. When I present, I kind of, I basically, it turns off.
Okay.
The fear, being worried about what people are thinking, I kind of just go into speaker mode.
Do you have any practices or
No.
even superstitions, things that, like methods before? It's a light switch.
Yeah.
You just hit us. Did that in itself have to be learned? Where in the early days where you would...
I think I just started doing it.
Wow.
And I don't think I'm great now. I think I was terrible when I started.
Okay. Yeah.
I've actually found some old recordings that I watch and I'm like, oh my gosh, what were you doing?
Yeah.
Really bad. But I didn't know that at that point.
Of course.
So, and I think that just goes into like everything I do. At the time, you do the best that you can, that you think is good enough, that you think is right. You put forth your effort and you just do it. At that time, I didn't know I was not a great speaker. Though I look at it now and I think it was terrible. That's what let me get the reps in to practice, to become more comfortable, to learn how to speak, to learn how the structure of the presentation I should give. Like, it's the reps that give you the results. And there is still difficulty. Like I said, a lot of people think that I'm super personable and I walk around and network with everybody. If I go to a conference that I don't know the people there and they don't know me like they're coming to my own conference, my hands are usually like in my pocket and I'm standing at a wall and I'm not talking to anybody. That is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Tale of two Matthews.
Yeah. When it's my own event and people know me, I am very different. It's way easier.
Yeah.
If people approach me to talk, it's a lot easier. Otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty introverted and shy when it goes to like crowds and yeah. And as much as I'm on camera, even right now, I have hated being on camera. I, to this day, know that I should be doing more selfie style videos, vlog style videos, stuff. I have done almost zero because I am so uncomfortable doing it and I don't like it and I am terrible at it. So even inside the media piece, that's like a big part of my focus and job. I still have a lot of growing and things to get over and work on.
I just wonder if perhaps you're maybe even be too hard on yourself, that if it's not in your wheelhouse, as it were, that.
I think it is absolutely the fact that it's uncomfortable, and I just don't like it.
That is the key?
Yeah, because I absolutely should be doing it, and I know I should. I don't think the fact it's uncomfortable or the fear of it should mean maybe I just don't do it. And the reason is I know the impact that it would have, and I know the growth that it would have, and I know the reach that it would have to ultimately, that is my mission. If my whole goal is raising awareness to our industry, raising awareness to technologies, bringing in interest from young people to get into these technologies, to help grow the workforce, that is one of the key ways to do it. So though it's uncomfortable, I have the platform, I have the mission, I have all the key pieces to do it, except for the fact that it's uncomfortable and I need need to step into it more, and I need help from other people to do, That's another thing I've said in the past that this just falls back to is like, I believe that when you have the knowledge and you have the resources and you know the impact, that it's basically your just responsibility to do it at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So RCon, coming into year 4, talk about the iterations of it, from where it started. Is it where, if you envisioned its future at the point of year 1, where it is you thought it might be, and if there is a dream vision that still has yet to be achieved?
Ooh, there's always a dream vision. There has to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the biggest iteration? Let's just say from year 1, what's the biggest change?
Honestly, the biggest change from year 1 to now year 4 is just the scale of it. That's about it.
So it caught on pretty well.
It went amazing for a year 1 event. Everybody that participated was surprised at how well it was put together, the quality of content, the atmosphere, the culture, the feel, the fun, the quality of people who attended. Like, when I first thought about putting the conference on, I did call some people I know that go to some other events and that have, put on events before. And some of the biggest feedback I got was like, the event space, putting on an event could go well. The hardest thing about a year 1 event is if you don't do it right, you're never going to do it again. Because you're not gonna have good reputation. People are not gonna enjoy it. You're gonna get bad rep. Sponsors won't come back. Like, everything has to work right, or it's not gonna work. So there was a lot of thought put into why we formed it the way we did, the format we were doing. Going to some conferences for 14 years, I kind of took the feedback I'd always heard over years of things people liked and didn't like about other conferences. I thought about the things that were most beneficial to me and going to other events, things that I liked or didn't like, and really designed our conference to be exactly what I would want if I was going to an event. I chose, we're not doing like breakout sessions and different classes and different topics at the same time, because I've always found that that's challenging in that there's multiple you want to go to. You can only pick one. You forget where it is. You get lost down a hallway. The rooms are smaller, so they get too full, and now not everyone can get in. There's all these challenges around big conferences and having all those breakouts. So we said, okay, especially for year one, we're not doing any breakouts. This is basically going to be like a TEDx event. Like we have one stage. I'm going to try to have diverse speakers and diverse technologies, because our goal is educating on all these different technologies and use cases. And we had a very small venue. Again, first time event, you have no idea who's coming. Could be 5 people, could be 50. I believe year one, we had about 125 people or so, somewhere in that range. And we had room in this upstairs balcony at our event space for 14 vendor tables. And we sold all of them. Like, so year one went beautifully. Could not have asked for anything better, honestly. Every year has kind of felt the same way. It's gotten slightly better. We always learn something, just like you do on a project with a technology, giving a speech. You always are like, okay, what did I do wrong? What could I improve? So trying to get feedback from people who came, how was the food? Was the timing okay? Was the seats? What about the content? Throughout the year, I'll post stuff on LinkedIn and try to ask questions of like, hey, if you had the option to, sit in a panel on, listen to this topic or this topic or that, I'd put polls out and like do that throughout the year just to get a feel for like, what are people interested in? So really the growth from year 1 to 4 has doubled in attendance every year. And we've just moved to a better venue. We've improved our audio visual. We've grown our own team, our media team, our film crew. We've bought more cameras. So we continue to put more and more quality into the event. But honestly, the format, the style, the types of content has stayed identical almost.
Wow. And
it's continued to double. We're on this year. The fun thing about events is you don't know how many people come till it's over. We'll see if it doubles again from last year. And I'm not honestly all that worried about double every year. What does the growth of the event mean? It means that people are getting quality results, whether it be they're making sales on gear because people are coming and learning about them and buying them, or they're making relationships with clients so they can go back and get more service work, or so the feedback of growth is that you're providing value to people. That's super exciting. It's not about the numbers for me. I am honestly more concerned about it being a 10,000 person where we lose some of that quality, we lose some connection, we lose some intimacy. Like, to be honest, we're more thinking future of like, we have to build in a way that we keep our core and we keep the benefits of what our conference is now, even as we grow, which might grow into multiple events, might grow into regional events, might grow into industry topic events. There's a whole roadmap for where that can go. And some of that is our plan as the growth stays, because then we can get even more value to people by making it more specific to them. Right now, our event is diverse on who attends. It's all industries. It's anybody interested in reality capture technologies, digital twin, BIM. It's all of that. So there is some content that's not beneficial to some of the attendees. They pick and choose what they want to listen to. But overall, it's everyone that's working in the built environment and in construction. So even the networking is still very relevant. But I think the future will be more specialized content.
Okay. Tremendous.
And I'll add one more thing about the event, just that I think so many events just really drop the ball on. is the fun aspect.
The fun.
The fun. They get done with all these classes. Everybody's learned. They're kind of burnt out from sitting in a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And typically there's like a 1 hour networking happy hour.
Yep.
And people meet for a minute and it's a big room of people that get lost and then they close and everybody disperses.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, everyone's like, where's everybody going? What bar are you meeting at? Do you want to go get dinner? Like everybody just disperses, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know who to meet, gets lost. You end up in locations that have people that are not from the conference. That is one of the things that I immediately implemented in ours is, okay, one of the most valuable things about conferences for everybody is the networking. Mm-hmm. The networking is not happening during the presentations. So instead of shutting down the venue and saying, good luck, go downtown, see you tomorrow, we turn it into networking happy hours every single night.
Yep.
Dinner is done from 6 to 10:30 p.m. Mm-hmm. We still provide networking opportunities, casino night, football night, like all these fun things. Because everything is about people. Mm-hmm. A client is a person. You build a relationship with the person, they want to work with you.
Sure.
You want to sell somebody a piece of gear, goes back to the LinkedIn message. Don't just reach out to some random person and tell them about your awesome gear.
Yep.
Get to know them. Mm-hmm. Ask about their problems. Find out what if they're already using gear. Like the conversations that happen in the networking time are the most valuable part of our conference. Mm-hmm. And most conferences completely drop the ball on that. That's one of our biggest differentiators.
Talk about filling a void. Reality Capture Network Conference. So your field is predicated on optimization. How is Matthew Byrd optimized?
Whoa.
What has happened when Matthew Byrd is just feeling it and at his best?
I don't know. I mean,
do you have down days professionally?
So
let's reverse engineer it.
I mean, my typical work schedule is Monday through Friday, 4:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Mm-hmm. Very rarely, if I've got some major thing, I'll do some work late at night in the evening, or very, very rarely anything on the weekend. Mm-hmm. That's drawing some of those boundaries of like, okay, I have a family, I have events, I have other, I have stuff going on, I have friends, I have to have life, not just be work.
Yep.
So I sacrifice and get some work in by coming in really early.
Yeah.
It is very rare that I am down or feel like issues or overwhelmed. There's a little bit of it because I am doing so many things and I'm really trying to push hard at building something massive. Mm-hmm. So there's a very little bit of it. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD.
Okay.
So I kind of operate 100 miles an hour at 20 different things all day.
Which is good for two companies, a podcast and a conference. Okay.
And
that works.
Committees and other things. Yeah, there's a lot. I feel like there's probably pros and cons to how I operate and focus and all of those things.
Yeah.
At one point, I went to the doctor. I was like, I wonder if I should get meds for this because I've heard of other people doing so and it helping them focus. And the response was, I really don't think you should do this. I think that that's actually partly what's leading to you being successful in business.
Uh-huh.
And I was like,
Feature, not a bug.
Well, I've not thought of it that way, but maybe that's true. Uh-huh. I will say that I believe there are definitely pros and cons. If you go to my computer right now and you open up my browser, you will see 50 different tabs open on multiple screens. And I am in between them all day, every day.
Oof.
Between emails, between working on writing stuff, between working on images, between working on LinkedIn, between brand ideas to conference agenda to speaker editing to business stuff. I mean, bank accounts and budgeting and I don't really have a lot of structure. I don't have a lot of routines. I don't have a lot of time blocking. I just operate like in 5-minute increments, basically all day on whatever task I feel is most important at that minute. And I think there's pros and cons to that, but not just one or the other.
But it sounds like when the notion of pivoting from project A to project B presents itself, it is based solely on feel. I mean, is that fair to say? Or when you hit any sort of wall, maybe with A, and then you go to B, and then revisit it, maybe with greener eye.
All the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the above. I believe, like some people check emails once a day. They're like, people can wait. I'll respond later. Or they schedule exactly when they're going to work on a single thing. Because I have so many different projects, so many different things I'm responsible for, I jump in and out of all of them. Email, I check it every 10 minutes because I have so many people that need so many different things that I can't wait 3 days to respond to an email. I also would say in that topic, customer service is one of the, apart from LinkedIn, customer service is the other thing that has built my business.
Okay.
So many people can't even get a company to call them back or answer the phone or respond in a week. Though I now maybe turn my own phone off at night at home, I didn't used to. It was 24/7. I have been on meetings at midnight helping people fix scan registrations because it was an emergency. And I wouldn't have gotten that relationship if I didn't answer that call, if they didn't know I was going to be available. Being available to people and responding in a timely manner will absolutely get you repeat business. If people know they're in a need and you come off as like, I don't really care, I'm not going to respond to you, I'm not paying attention, you're not going to grow. So that is still why I have a sense of like, I'm double checking my phone. I try to respond quickly. I read my LinkedIn messages as soon as I get them and I try to respond. I read emails every 10, 20, I'm checking them constantly.
Wow.
In between projects. Again, say what you want, right? You should have a process. That might be negative. I often think there are negative aspects to that, but I think that the positive outweigh it.
What type of non-industry content do you enjoy, Matthew?
I don't listen to, when it comes to books or audiobooks, I never have and never will listen to fiction stories. But if it's not something educational, I'd rather watch the movie. That's how I feel about that.
Okay. That's sad.
So when it comes to podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube channels, I really like learning from people who are doing or have done something that I would like to do. So that goes back to some of the influence that helped me build RCN. Would be Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
And Grant Cardone. And Lewis Howes. And there are some of those people that positive and negative aspects. Some people like them, some people don't. I always respond to that with like, you don't have to love somebody to gain some knowledge from them. Those people have built very successful businesses, very big communities, very good at what they do. Following Gary V and learning from him on the social media, the podcasting, the value. He's always encouraging people to go out and do that. Pursue the thing you love. Build a podcast about anything. People will listen. There is an audience for it. It doesn't matter if it's about kittens or garage sailing or you can build a community and following around anything. So literally, if it were not for hearing some of those things from Gary Vee, I would have never thought to start RCN.
Okay. Wow. Gary Vee, the launchpad, as it were.
I didn't know anything about podcasts. I didn't listen to podcasts. I never went on a podcast app, Spotify, Apple, nothing. I did not listen to a podcast before I started a podcast. With one caveat, I had seen some YouTube videos of podcast episodes from Gary Vee, Lewis Howes, a couple of those people.
Yeah.
The inspiration of the podcast came from Gary Vee specifically. And upon that, started doing some research into other podcasters and, listening to some episodes. And that is what solidified the launch.
Okay.
And Grant Cardone, another loved and hated figure, maybe, very successful in real estate, building a large community around his 10X brand, put on a massive conference every year where people are coming to get inspired and hear speakers. And I went to his conference in Miami. There were 20,000 people in a stadium. And he sat there and talked about what it took to put on the conference and build and how he got. And that is exactly what inspired putting on our conference. I had gone to conferences before. The thought had crossed my mind of maybe I could get involved in building a conference or help support someone else's conference. But if I did not go to that and if I did not follow him and see the community that he built and see the attendance and interest in his conference and how it was put on, I would have not started our conference.
Wow. Okay. Quite the spark.
So I look back at those things and realize the power of educating, of sharing, of talking about these things. If those two people inspired starting a podcast, starting a conference, which is now everything RCN is, and most people in our industry don't know either of them. I have the opportunity to help share things that I'm learning from different people I follow and repurpose that and share it back to our community, which might inspire the next podcast or the next conference or the next company.
Absolutely.
So I love that aspect of content and of the podcast and the videos and the YouTube and this goes back to that, what I said earlier about trying to do selfies and film and do social is I know all of that. So I feel like it's my responsibility to try to impact it and the good that can come from it.
What's a common piece of advice you might disagree with or that you might think is misguided or overrated?
The first one that comes to mind is fake it till you make it. Because I feel like that could be played either way as a yes, do it, or a no, don't do it. But it's the first one that comes to mind. And I think it depends on what angle you're answering, you're taking that.
Right.
Because what I do not think anyone should do is fake something they don't know until they make it. That's different than doing something you're not good at or uncomfortable with.
Right.
An example being, I'm willing to go on stage and be super uncomfortable and give a bad presentation about laser scanning because I know laser scanning. That's not me faking it versus going on stage and talking about something else that I don't have experience in, AI.
Sure.
Oh, I'll give a speech on AI.
Yeah.
I don't know the first thing about behind the scenes, all the program. I'm not an AI expert, so I absolutely should turn down. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million paid speaking gig. I should not go fake that I know AI because you're going to lose credibility. You're going to say things that aren't true. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
Okay.
So many people say fake it till you make it. I think you have to You have to look at what it is. If it's something you can honestly do, then that's different. But I think people take that saying in a couple different directions.
One last question, Matthew Byrd. We've talked about 2 companies, podcast, conference, you're 4. How have you grown as a leader, and where can you most improve?
I have learned a lot over the last several years. You don't know everything. And that's okay. And it's fun living that and then hearing it from very successful business people of like, hire smart people, build smart people around you. And it's like living that and feeling it and watching it be true. Of like, you don't know everything and you don't have to. That's not your job. Like, as you're growing, find the people that do.
Yeah.
Ask the questions. Be teachable. Be a learner forever. The moment you think you don't need to learn or you have all the answers, you're wrong.
Yeah.
The moment you think that someone else's suggestion or advice is not worth considering, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, the best leaders, in my mind, remain teachable, flexible, especially when it's in line with people who have done something that is being suggested. That's another piece. Like, being willing to take criticism, being willing to take feedback, negative, take direction. Like, a lot of people, when starting a business or working for themselves or wanting to be in that leader role, are too worried about those things. They're too focused on that they already have the answers.
Right.
So I think being okay with not always having the answers, being okay with failure, learning from those failures and continuing to move forward without being stuck at them or letting them impact how you feel or how you operate. I think those are some big ones. I know one thing that I'm terrible at as a leader.
What would that be?
Dealing with negativity.
Negativity.
I love the good stuff.
Yeah.
I love hiring good people. I love delegating work. I love seeing people successful in their role. I love promoting people. I love making clients happy. Dealing with people that are close, that are in my team or that report to me or that are my employees or that are my friends, or dealing with negative situations that directly involve me, that is one thing that I'm very bad at. And over the last 8 years, 9 years now almost as a business owner, I've had to deal with a lot of that. Employees that were unfortunately very not good employees, dealing with lying situations, dealing with stealing, I've grown a lot, but that is a very, very difficult thing for me. Sitting down and having those hard or negative conversations or that decision of like needing to remove someone or that is my least favorite thing ever. Yep. And unfortunately, sometimes you're still in the role that's your job and you have to do it.
Yeah. Do you give much mind to the feasibility of making strides in that regard? Or is it almost a fail-safe where you know if that discomfort does continue, at least, because if you think about a toxic work environment, if you were to somehow become complacent with it, and then all of a sudden you have, I just wonder if it's maybe even another one of those features, not a bugs, maybe, but I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean,
some people are certainly more cut out to have those conversations and be that cutthroat when they need to be. And
yeah, I think there's pros and cons for sure.
Yep.
I give people a lot of opportunity to fix problems. I care so much, though, about the team and the whole company or the whole whatever it is, wherever that potential problem is, that it's not like I just overlook things. I don't like going directly to it and just addressing it because I struggle with it.
Yeah.
I do it more now than I used to. It used to be really, really bad for me, honestly. I've had to do it so much that, yes, I've gotten better at it. But I care so much about culture and people in the workplace and how they feel and team atmosphere and environment. And again, back to even externally, customer service, how clients feel, how we respond to them, how we communicate, how we come off. I care about all of that so much that I have to address issues quickly. And if you let something go on for too long, it can literally destroy a company, a client relationship. So I think that it's a really important aspect of business, but I definitely have learned that it's not one of my strengths. And as I grew in our first business, I was able to recognize that. And as we hired other leaders on, delegate some of the hard conversations to people that maybe are better at it.
Yeah.
But again, I think that comes back to like one of the most important things for a leader is to learn about themselves. Self-awareness in your strengths, your weaknesses, accepting those, talking through those, not being upset by those. That is very important for leaders in their growth journey. And again, that's just something you learn along the way.
Well, thank you, Matthew Byrd, for being so introspective as an RCN podcast interviewee.
Wow.
It was a delight.
Thank you. I appreciate all the fun questions. I know we talked about this before, and it was like, I don't like knowing what you're going to ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes afterward, I'm like, maybe I should have thought about that question more. But that's what I love about podcasting and just conversation. We've talked about it even internally of like, we don't prepare our guests all the way. I don't like when people have a long time to think about their answer or research their answer or study their answer or write their answer down. I think that the value of just immediate conversation and getting someone's thoughts, it's so much fun.
And not only that, I think most people, audience members being people, can kind of sniff it out. They kind of know.
I can.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. I'm even going on some podcasts soon, and they sent over a whole list of questions. And to me, I understand the angle of that, and maybe there are guests who would prefer that. But for me, it immediately goes like, I don't know yet. I haven't gone through the interview yet, but like, is the host even like interested in the conversation, or is it just like, give me these answers? Or, that could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Matthew. Thanks a ton, man.
Thank you, sir.